Hey everyone, this is episode 2 talking about the redistricting that is going on in the United States. If you haven't already listened to part 1, we talk about Tennessee and the recent rulings, and it's really fun and really exciting, and you should check it out. But if you already have, then stay tuned. We're going to talk about other states that are also trying to change their maps. Enjoy the episode. So we are back talking about the redistricting war, and this time we are going to the great state of Virginia. As on April 21st, there was a referendum that Virginians voted on. It asked citizens if the Constitution should be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional districts. Now, this measure passed by a very close margin. I believe it was 51.7%, which is a very tight race. And this was a huge victory for Democrats. Democrats were absolutely going crazy on X. They were cheering, they were celebrating because they were going to get extra seats in the House of Representatives. They were even making shirts with the new map on it saying 10 to effing 1. I mean, they should be glad because they spent a lot of money. They spent $64 million trying to get this thing passed. They had Obama making commercials about it. They had celebrities trying to promote this. It was a whole big deal. And it was also all hands on deck. They had to get this passed no matter what. And even though it was passed, just a few weeks later, the Virginia Supreme Court came out and struck it down. And let's just say some people were not happy. Here's a woman, for some reason, screaming at a building.
Shame! Shame on every single Supreme Court justice who voted to take away our rights as a people to express ourselves. Shame for taking away our ability to tell our state what we want when other states in this hellscape of a nation are doing it without their voters' consent. Shame! Shame! Shame!
But the question is why? Why was it that this bill was struck down when people voted for it? Well, in a 4-3 decision, the Supreme Court of Virginia saw 2 violations of the state's constitution. The first was that the Virginia Constitution requires that any constitutional amendment be approved by the Grand Assembly in 2 separate legislative sessions. The court ruled that the second approval, which occurred during a special session in late 2025, was invalid. The special session was explicitly called for budgetary matters and emergency legislation only, and that introducing a permanent constitutional change regarding redistricting extended the scope of the governor's official proclamation. The majority also argued that the referendum bundled 2 different issues: the authority of the General Assembly to draw maps and a timeline for judicial review. So it was a processing error that got this case thrown out, and also these people were not following the Constitution of Virginia. So the Democrats wasted $64 million that they could have used on the midterms just to fail. All that money is now poof, gone. Basically, they are all back to square one. Now, I know what you're thinking. Virginia voted for this. In other states like Tennessee and Florida, they didn't even vote for their maps and they went through. And that's because those different states were actually following their constitution. As each state has their own constitution, and according to the 10th Amendment, each state has a right to do elections as they please. If the Virginia Constitution was different and allowed for this referendum to go through, then that map would have been legal. And the new map would have been put into place without any objection. Just like we are now seeing with states like Louisiana, Tennessee, and Florida. This means that any state can draw lines wherever they want as long as they are following their constitution and also the Constitution of the United States. So there's a strong possibility that states in the South, for example, will be a deep sea of red, while Democratic states like Illinois and California will have to redraw their lines and cut up their lines to help their party win. Like in Illinois, this map is becoming very popular, and they are calling it the computer chip map. Now, this isn't an official map. Illinois isn't going to implement this yet, but it is something that could possibly happen in the future. And as you can see, all of the lines start out in Chicago and go all the way down to the bottom of the state. And this is where there's a difference between red states and blue states in the United States of America. If you take a look at a state from the 2024 election, you might see something similar to this. A blue district surrounded by a sea of red. And people always wonder, why is it that the Democrats win? Because the Republicans win more counties. And that is simply because of population density. Most Democrats live in big cities while most Republicans live in more rural areas. This makes it harder for Democrats to gerrymander because they have to draw maps from the biggest city outward, just like we saw with that proposed Illinois map, along with the Virginia proposed map, which just got struck down by the Virginia Supreme Court. As you can see, districts 10, 11, 7, 1, and 8 all have lines going up to one single area, which is the Alexandria and Arlington area, which are both big urban cities right outside of Washington, D.C., making them Democratic strongholds. Even though land doesn't vote, people vote, there might be a district where there are 5 million Democrats in it. That votes blue. And then there might be another district right next to it that has 5,000 Republicans, and they will all vote red, making that district Republican. Republicans definitely have an advantage in this fight, because they are all so spread out. And they can also cut up different maps and get rid of blue districts without the state looking weird or having weird lines or districts. Some people are even asking Grok what would be the most fair political map, and Grok came up with this. This new fair map would give Republicans 280 seats to 156 seats to the Democrats, basically making it impossible for the Democratic Party to ever win the House again. However, I do get fearful that for the midterms, Democrats are going to be so angry about this redistricting war that they're going to come out in absolute droves, and all of this remaking of the maps is going to be all for nothing. Because even if Republican states redistrict, it doesn't mean that the state will go red, because anything can happen. And this is why I encourage everyone to vote. Even if you think that your state's going to go red or blue, you gotta vote, because your voice matters no matter who you are. So the question is, how can we fix this situation so then everyone can be happy and everyone can be represented in the United States? And honestly, this isn't an easy task, because I am not personally a fan of there being districts solely based on race. However, I also don't like it that there are states out there that are just changing their states all willy-nilly, hoping to guarantee a vote, instead of actually talking to the American people. Why is it that a Republican would campaign in Tennessee when they already know that they're going to win no matter what? It is changing the way that politicians are campaigning, and I'm not a fan of it. Along with that, it would be very difficult for the government to do anything about this situation as well. Because, for example, the government might come out and say that they are passing an anti-gerrymandering law. And then they could attack different states claiming that their state is too gerrymandered and they need to rewrite their maps. And then that state government can come out and say, hey, we're not gerrymandering. This is a violation of the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. And no government has a right to tell a state how to do their election, and it could cause a whole big constitutional crisis. The only possibility, I think, in this whole situation is an amendment to the Constitution. But I honestly don't think that will happen anytime soon, because that is very hard to do. As right now they're trying to keep Virginia's new map by proposing term limits to the Supreme Court justices of Virginia, which sounds very authoritarian to me. And I also don't think it'll work at all. So it looks like as of right now, we are stuck in this situation. More states will draw different lines and we're just going to have to deal with it. Is it unfair? Maybe. Is it illegal? No. As long as they're following their constitution and the Constitution of the United States, they have the green light. And with that, I just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Dockery Docket. And until next time, like my mom always says, be good, be kind, be loving, goodbye.